Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. You're on another episode of Iron Radio. This is Phil Stevens. I'm a strength coach, powerlifter, Highland Games athlete, youth sport coach, maker of many things.
Nice. This is Dr. Mike Nelson, Associate Professor at the Carrick Institute, creator of the Flex Diet Cert and the Phys Flex Cert. We just rolled into South Padre, Texas yesterday.
You need a second home there.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
It's time.
Things are so darn expensive.
Yeah. As much as you're there, you could rent it out while you're not there.
We've thought of it.
Break even.
Mm-hmm. Downside is, money to buy place, and then
upkeep
is stupid expensive because of the salt water, the ocean, all that stuff. But
not exactly a good time to buy either. But
no. But, got up for a kiteboard session and the 15-foot jump on my first day, so kind of getting back in the groove, and it was fun.
Fun. Yeah, especially living in Minnesota, that seems to be a nice out for you. It's like Minnesota's great. I mean, I like it cold. I don't mind it cold. I know people think that's crazy, but but it's also nice. I'm envious, spend time in the ocean and
get
stuff.
A break. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially we come down here usually the transition season. So it's just about the time where you've had enough snow in Minnesota and it's just kind of crappy till it gets nice. And then it's the off season down here. So it works out perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And intro wise, I am Lonnie Lowry. I just live in Northeast Ohio. I mean, I travel a little, but not like that. Former competitive bodybuilder, and I was a professor full-time for a long time, adjunct now, and I consult for the food industry and academia, stuff like that. I have, as one part of my background, I am a member of the Institute of Food Technologists, and I just thought I'd share two little pieces of news from the most recent IFT magazine. If anybody's interested in more where food and supplements come from, FT, the Food Technology magazine, I just think it's really great. It's not just a science journal. It's a magazine, but, there's references and some basic citations with each article and all that kind of stuff. So it's just great to see what's coming down the pike. But if you don't want to do that, that's what we're here for. So this first one I mentioned last week just a little. Engineered cells could cut the cost of cellular ag. Now, this is about the cultured meat thing. Mike and I first saw something about this, and it was in an IFT meeting in Vegas a long time ago, 2017 maybe. Yeah. And they were saying, eventually the cost of cultured meat, right? And if you're not familiar, of course, it's just muscle cells grown in large vats, almost imagine like a brewery, but they're making meat. And it was super expensive at the time. And they said, it's going to come down. It's going to come down. Well, this is a development that you might actually start seeing this in the grocery store in the next year or two. Let me just share this. It says researchers at Tufts developed bovine muscle cells that produce their own growth factors. The team believes that this step can be significant in reducing the cost of producing cultivated meat. Growth factors bind to receptors on cell surfaces and send a signal for cells to grow and mature into different types. And, of course, that's what you want, right? A big grown muscle fiber, muscle cell that you could eat. Researchers in this study, was published in Cell Reports Sustainability, modified stem cells to produce their own fibroblast growth factor, FGF. And they go on to say that it's just an instruction for the cells to behave in a certain way. What they did was to engineer the bovine muscle cells to produce their own growth factors and turn on the signaling pathways themselves. Typically, they're added right in the media surrounding these cultures, and apparently that specific ingredient accounts for most of the cost. So that's kind of the point. If they're going to make their own, they don't have to bathe it, in this soup of nutrients and growth factors. And it says at this point, all they need to do is optimize it. It did say currently we did see slower growth with the engineered cells, but I think we can overcome that, the researcher said. So this will be interesting, although we've all seen it before. And I've always just kind of rolled my eyes. It'll say you buy beef and it'll say free of growth factors, free of GH or whatever growth factors. And I'm like, I put more in there. I don't know. I'm not offended by that, but this obviously they're making their own, and that muddies that water even more. Like people, I don't like growth factors. Well, first of all, why? Right? What's the evidence really? And two, if they're making their own, is that more natural? Is that more acceptable? I don't know. To me, it's going to bring down the cost. So, would you guys eat cultured meat? I got to think you guys would at least try it.
I'd try it. I mean, at least to see if it's not as good, then of course I'm not gonna. Or if it's price prohibitive, like if it tastes bad or it's like way more, then no. Why?
No, exactly. It's going to have to be the
know.
same or even less, you would think.
Yeah, exactly. You would think less. I mean, but I got nothing against it. I mean, I'm not. Modern science is pretty cool. I'm not against it. So.
Yeah,
you're not a meat elitist.
No, I mean, I'm all about growing my own meat and apples and shit. But like, if you got something better, I'm game.
Yeah, when you can grow your own. Yeah.
So
I do like that. It removes the ethical problem from it, and it's less wasteful because you're not growing hooves and horns and fur and all this other stuff. And sure, even if farmers can try to use that in some ways, I mean, you're eating the muscle tissue, you're eating the meat.
Yep.
And so if modern agriculture already supports like 95+% of the people on Earth, I mean, I've heard that globally the Earth could only support like a few tens of thousands of people. So ag is already how, we support humans. So like you, Phil, I think, why not? I'm all about science feeding more people. And if there's no animal suffering and all that kind of stuff, but in a practical world, it can't be more expensive. I just won't buy it. Even if it's very comparable, but I can buy the regular beef.
Yep.
I might pay just a little bit more because of the ethics behind it. I kind of just like the science and the better ethics. But have you tried cultured meat yet, Mike, or anything like that?
No, I haven't had the opportunity to. And, kind of like you guys were saying, I think everybody now is like, oh, no, this is horrible. How can we do this? No one's going to buy whatever. And I think, like you guys said, if it tastes just as good or better and the price is competitive, I think the vast majority of people will buy it. And if it's cheaper and better, I think almost everyone will buy it.
Right.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, well, it tastes pretty good. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one, you have to look at the bigger picture, too. I mean, like, I don't think anybody would be against, like, if they were able to lab grow replacement hearts, which is a muscle. Like, this is potentially one step closer to that. Like, if they figure this out, maybe we can start doing that. Like, oh, look, lab grew a new liver for you. Now you don't have to wait on this list for somebody to get in a horrible car accident and you get to take their dead liver.
Right. It's true.
Make you one. You know? So, I mean, those, I don't know. There's good and there's bad to all this stuff.
Right. There is.
As long as it's just as healthy and there's nothing fucking weird in it, I'm not going to get any weird cancer from eating lab-grown meat, then I'm game.
Well, that's the point. Like when I see Impossible burgers and stuff like that, and I look at the nutrition label, I'm very nonplussed by that. I'm like, really?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? Like this, I'd rather eat meat, which is arguably a better quality protein. Because like when you look at the protein fat ratio and that kind of stuff, it's not that good. Yeah, I don't know. This might be a better.
Yeah, my question would be like, ethically, could a vegan eat lab-grown meat? I would think they would. I would think they could because they're not against.
You would.
They're not against meat. They're against getting meat from a living thing, and this is not coming from a living thing. So,
source materials were from living things at some point. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I once had a grad student. She said, "I won't eat anything that had a face." Well, this doesn't have
a no face. Yeah.
No face. So if that's your definition of vegan, then you're good to go here.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one other. This is about beverages and healthy hydrating, which seems boring, but it's a little bit about what these market firms are saying is coming down the pike. So let's just take a look at this. Functional beverages across formats are on the rise, ranging from ready-to-drink coffees and teas to rapid hydration beverages and carbonated soft drinks, observes Micah Greenhill, marketing director in beverages at ADM. Research also shows that the top 5 fastest growing drink categories, among other things, are functional juice / water and protein beverages. Well, this could be good for our listeners, right? Like we're looking for, we've tried that. What is it? Protein 2.0 or something. It's just like a protein water. It's 15 grams of protein. But sometimes you got to sift through these because they overdo the sugar alcohols and a bunch of crap, and it just gives you gastric upset. But so the more kinds there are, the better. I think this is encouraging. It says protein fortified and alternative protein drinks continue to be in demand. So that's good news for a lot of the sports nutrition world, I think, is more choices for protein drinks. Great, bring them.
Yeah.
One of the things it talks about here is hydration, and it says electrolytes are one of the most sought out claims by younger consumers. It goes on to say the electrolyte source can also add to consumer perceptions. And I have mixed thoughts on this. Like, Mike, I think you're more pro-sodium than I am.
Probably.
But it says the electrolyte source can add to the consumer perceptions in other ways. For example, both sea salt and pink Himalayan salt appeal to label-conscious consumers as they perceive it to have more positive benefits than traditional salt. I'm very skeptical of that one.
Yeah, I'd like to see some data on that. Yeah. And I like sea salt. I just like it for the taste. I'm not convinced that because I'm using pink sea salt, I'm getting a ton of micro minerals from it.
Exactly. I once had a marketing guy ask, he's like, what's really different about this? That's not much. You know, I mean, sodium chloride is still the centerpiece here. It's salt, man. But you're right. I mean, some kind of micro or trace mineral in there giving it a slight flavor difference. But if consumers think it's way healthier, no. And I do admit I've softened over the years because I kind of grew up, and if you think about in the nutrition world, Americans grotesquely overconsume salt, but we're a special group, you know, people on low carb diets and they're excreting lots of sodium or because the insulin's just not around, all that kind of stuff. There are circumstances for sure, or just sweating your butt off for hours at a time. We are a special population. So I'm not completely against it. But when consumers are real excited, I mean, you put on a label, you put electrolyte and they're all over it. You put sodium and they might not be. You know what I mean? It's like this consumer, or you put energy bar. If you put calorie bar, the average person is not going to buy it. You would, Phil. But you get the point. Is a lot of this is consumer perceptions, I think. The part of this article I really wanted to share was mental health and cognition, because I think a lot of people who are interested in physique or strength, they also want their mind to be as strong and as fast as possible. It says the growing demand for ingredients for the mind was one of the 9 emerging food, beverage, and nutrition mega trends Prenova identified that will shape the food industry in 2024 and beyond. It talks about products containing adaptogens and nootropics. Now, when I hear the word adaptogen, I'm usually nonplussed by that one because you've heard it's just such a vague claim. It'll help you adapt to any
thrown
stress.
Around everywhere.
It does. It gets abused. And, you know, like I might have bought ginseng once decades ago and never bought it again kind of thing, which is a kind of the poster child. But there's lots of these adaptogen type things. But nootropics, things that might help with cognition, memory, whatever. I'm interested in that kind of stuff. It says this is especially with enduring concerns around performance and focus and brain fog in the wake of the pandemic. And this is something that I did struggle with some long COVID. I mean, I was incredibly foggy and fatigued to the point that, I mean, I'm slamming like pre-workout stuff just to function at work. It was not good. And I'm almost sure that's what it was. I mean, I'm not low thyroid. Fatigue and fogginess are such vague symptoms. How do you really know? But I like the idea. It says adaptogens in plants and mushrooms that help the body manage stress and anxiety are on the horizon. They mentioned lion's mane, for example, and I am quite a fan. I've looked at some of the science on lion's mane.
Pretty good, actually.
It is pretty good. Yeah. And that's very encouraging. And it talks about coffee alternatives. In fact, I get a lion's mane coffee mix. I think that's that Four Sigmatic coffee. It looks like
I like their stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if you try it, you know, it might be stronger on the caffeine, and that's part of it, but you feel it. So I'm all about drinks that might reduce fogginess, and that's what piqued my interest in NAC as well, because there were some physicians that were using it partly in a cocktail for brain fog. Yeah, so coffees and proteins and all the kinds of stuff that I think the sports nutrition world is really going to embrace. And it looks like we were talking about consumers and the Gen Pop, they're embracing even like performance enhancing drugs like, Wegovy, it's our physique enhancing, I guess. So, it's good that they're interested in all this stuff. It gives us more options, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one other one I would add in that area too, and is obviously I'm biased because I work as a scientific advisor for the company, but Tecton makes a exogenous ketone beverage that's in a can. And it's the BHB molecule bonded to glycerol. So it's a different molecule than what a lot of the other exogenous ketone companies are using. And it's already in a canned beverage. They don't use any weird flavoring or anything like that. It actually tastes pretty good. It's not super sweet or anything like that. But what I've been able to play around with it for quite a while. And I've noticed that even brain fog, which is kind of a weird thing that's hard to pin down to what the actual definition is, but it seems to help a lot when you're, I'd say, below baseline, whether your stress level is super high, you're a little bit tired, your brain's kind of like just, not working as well. It seems to get me back to baseline pretty fast. It's in like 20 to 30 minutes. And so far, all the feedback on it's been really good. Again, it's mostly anecdotal. We're working on some studies, one of them with Abby, which obviously, Lonnie. And it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that area, too, with different molecules. And the nice part is it's not a stimulant either. So we've had some people use it for, like, surgeons at the end of their shift or military or, ER nurses, where it's like, oh, man, I got 3 to 4 more hours of my crazy-ass shift that I need to finish, but then I got to go home and sleep.
Right.
And so for stuff in the evening, and you're kind of seeing that with different compounds like L-theanine and other things like that may help cognition, but are not, all-out stimulants too, I think is going to be a bigger area.
I agree with that. You're right. Nobody wants to late afternoon be slamming stimulants like I was with the brain fog, and then you come home and you're counting ceiling tiles for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Lay in bed.
Well, that's a reason I won't train in the evenings. Not hard training.
Oh, evening is very hard for me to train. I have a hard time going to sleep.
Yeah, it's like I'm all jacked up. I'm jacked up from the training. I'm jacked up from the stimulants I want to take before if I'm going to go squat heavy, sorry, at this point I'm taking some caffeine.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
It's like, nope, 10 a.m. Then I got all day for that to wear off. So
yeah. I do find that the metabolism of caffeine, you can kind of burn through it. Like if I train around 2:00, and at first I was skeptical about that. I'm like, well, if you shunt blood away from your visceral organs, how is that going to work? But no, if you look, it looks like there is in fact better clearance and stuff like that, as far as I understand. So, yeah, the early afternoon actually is ideal for me. Like 1:00, 2:00, my joints are working. You can get wired.
Yep.
But you're right about things that don't affect, like they're not stimulants or depressants. I mean, like on the flip side, a lot of anti-anxiety things, and like you brought up theanine. Theanine can help cognition or it can help anxiety, but it's not a sedative. So sometimes you don't want a stimulant or a sedative. How about something that can help with brain function without being either of those ends of the spectrum? Okay. All right. Well, that's it for the news. I guess we could go to break. Phil, how did you want to phrase the topic?
Basically, let's just identify, like, when does training need to become more complex, I guess. Like,
okay.
When at what stage do you need to, like, just get complicated? I think people complicate things too early, in my opinion. And so, yeah, we'll delve into that and just kind of define, like, novice, intermediate, advanced, things like that in our minds. I mean, so.
Hey, everybody. Iron Radio is back, and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network, as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Okay, everybody, we are back. And what I want to do today, I thought it'd be interesting if we just kind of shoot the shit around the round table here about, at what point does training need to become more complicated? Because a lot of what I'm seeing from like day one, and this is with everything. I mean, we talked about it 100 times on like people like to start a plan and they turn their whole life on its head as far as training and nutrition and things like that. They go from zero to like doctorate program with their training and nutrition. And what happens is they fail most of the time because like they have no habits in place. And I think that's part of it. And then because it's just hard to stick to something like that. It's easier to take small bites of something and make those small bites habit and then add on to it. But I think the other thing is, as far as training goes, and probably nutrition as well, like if somebody's eating like the average person and they go from eating like the average person to 100% clean, they're going to show drastic results. But I'm not sure they're much more drastic results than if they just took simple steps, because no matter what, if you go from eating like an asshole to eating half like an asshole, you're going to show results. And then the problem is, where do you go from there? Like if you go from zero to super complicated training, like, okay, well, what's the next step? And I mean, you could say this in all things. That's just like the people that go from zero drugs to all the drugs. And like I've seen some of these powerlifters that are around now, like people have shown me what they're taking, and it's like, okay, well, where does he go now? Like he didn't start at 500 milligrams a test. He's taking 4 grams of shit. It's like, what's the next step? Yeah, you went from zero to it all. It's like, my God. And I don't know. I mean, I have clear arguments on this, but they're clear opinions. But like most people in the beginning stage, it's like just do basic periodization. Just add 5 pounds a week, and literally, what I don't get is like it's working. And people will change. It's like, is what you're doing working? Well, yeah. Why the fuck do you want to change it? It's like literally ride that pony as long as you possibly can, because this is the easiest part of your life as far as training, your training life. Like ride that little thing, add 5 pounds a week until you just can't, because eventually, yeah, the gains will stop, and now you can get a little more complicated. And as far as beginners go, like I'm making a big argument now that I'm working in schools and stuff, I'm trying to get this change at the high school and junior high level of like literally all these kids need all the way through junior high and high school is basic, simple barbell training with compound moves.
Yeah.
Because they don't have weak spots. Especially today, they're just weak. Their whole organism their organism mentally and physically is just weak nowadays because they don't go out and play. They don't have all this stuff. So, like I'm making an argument to these schools and coaches. It's like literally let them get more complicated in college. Once these kids have a base, it's like. And we've talked about it before, and that's like I've dealt with some bodybuilders, and it's like, I want to be a bodybuilder. Okay, you want to be a pro bodybuilder, but you can bench 135. And people don't get, like, if you just get some basic strength built, like when you're doing rep work with, okay, 135 is your max. So, okay, we need to do 5 sets of 10 on 4 different exercises. You're using little kid weight, and the amount of growth that you can potentially, let's say we get your bench to 315. Now that small work is at a much higher load, and there's more potential there.
Right. So it's almost like you have to earn the tools to even start to craft
Yeah.
It'd be like a plumber who couldn't pick up a wrench. It's like, let's work on using that wrench. Then
Yeah.
you can start to fix the pipes,
Well, and from what I've seen, it's a lot of, I don't know why, but you see a lot of like advanced programs go wrong. Like I've seen people begin and try to use conjugate. And to define conjugate, that's a system like created arguably by Louis Simmons. And it's based on a dynamic day and a max effort day. So one day's speed, one day's max effort. And people jumping into this, and you alternate those between the upper body and lower body. So you might have a dynamic upper body day and a max effort upper body day, and vice versa with a lower body. And it's all good and well, but they have no training background. And like number one, they don't know what max effort is. Because I argue that with all my new people, like they literally don't know what a 10 is. And when you're new, they can't. They just can't do a 10. They can't manually. Like I have new people, and it's like we'll go to something heavy, and they'll just give up. And it's like you got more than that. You just don't think you got more than that. And I don't think they can get all they can out of these advanced programs, and then they say the program didn't work. And it's like, no, you're just not there. You're not to where you can get the fruits of that labor. So. I mean, there's something that needs to be earned physically and mentally under the bar, under disciplined, just basic training. And like, if you can't do a chin up, then why do we need to spend 3 hours doing basic, like, I'm going to do a bunch of curls and some pullovers and blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, come on, let's just get to a basic line of fitness. So before we complicate things, and I understand everybody wants to. For some reason, complex is sexy, but everybody wants to say they're doing the next Bulgarian method and things like that. But I think in many ways they're hindering their progress by just trying to get too complicated. So
yeah, you just touched on something there that I think is part of this. I'm always ripping on late stage capitalism here and how it's overblown, but it's the niche. People want a complex system so they can own it. They have to get weirder and weirder to find their niche, and it's like, how about you don't have to make shit up in order to sell it. Like, you can. It's true that sometimes science moves in revolutions, but rarely is it a revolution. It's more often, an inch-wise thing. But I think some of that is just about the money. I need to come up with some complex. I've seen it with nutrition, too. You guys have heard me fuss about this. People, they want to remake science in their own image, put their own name on it. And this isn't new. Joe Weider and the Weider Principles did it, decades ago. Like the Weider Principle, this. I'm like, that's not the Weider Principle.
That's confusion, bro.
Yeah, there's a ton of, or it would be a real principle that exercise scientists knew way before. That's like, you're just, slapping your name on it and selling it. But in fact, other than capitalism and the urge to create a crazy ass system, part of me looks at this like the old ex-phys principle of diminishing returns. Like people make huge gains when they're early on. 20-pound gain in body weight in just 6 months to a year and then like Phil, by the time you were peaked, you might have been fighting all year long just to make much smaller gains, right? Yeah. I mean, diminishing returns as you approach your genetic ceiling kind of thing. So that's an argument to keep it simple when you're starting out. You're going to make crazy gains just by doing like in bodybuilding, you do your 3 sets of 10 progressive resistance training, keep adding more weight. Once you could do 2 more reps, add a little bit of weight, and you're going to make a tremendous gain so long as you're consistent without doing undulating periodization and stuff.
And I think another thing about it is, like, for instance, I am training a new young athlete. She's a female, 14 years old. She's never weight trained. She's been with me a month now. On day 1, I don't remember the exact load. It doesn't matter. Let's say 95 pounds. I had her do 5 or 4 sets of 3 at 95 pounds on deadlift. And then 1 set, the very last set, we do AMRAP in perfect form. Meaning if I see any drop in form, we call the set. So we don't push to even an 8, because a beginner, they start getting to 8, and what goes wrong is form. They can't hold form. So week 1, let's say it's 95 pounds. Her last set, she did like 7. And in her head, like, form was still impeccable. But in her head, that's it. That's all I got. And I'm like, you got a lot more than that. But I'm not going to, whatever. It's week 1. I don't care. That's fine. We'll stop. And then we just had 5 pounds a week. So now 4 weeks later, she's at, 115. And week 1, she hit 95 for 7. 3 weeks later, she hits 115 for 16. Like, could I have complicated things and had her do max effort and this and that? Yeah, I could, but she's not physically or mentally ready for that push that you need for like a conjugate program to, like, we need you to go to a 9.5. Like, all I'm going to do is potentially harm her. And how much more progress could we have made? Like, could I have added 10 more pounds? But is it worth the risk? You know what I'm saying? And that's what, you don't weigh that out. I mean, like, she is not ready physically or mentally to do a program like that without great risk.
You don't know how to dig deep or when, like, I remember doing, this is similar, but we were doing some caffeine research with those Redline energy drinks, and we were having people do ballistic bench throws, and we recruited people, and lesson learned, not going to do this again, that were recreationally active, but not actual strength trained, right?
Yeah.
And when we said, okay, max dynamic effort, the spasm that I saw some of these people do, they don't have the motor skill. They don't know how or when to push because, I'm saying give me maximum dynamic effort. Any one of us could do that, like, I know what you mean. It's a light load, go off, channel it with form. No way, man.
No
way.
And it's more than that. Like, she doesn't have the mental vocabulary with her body. Like, when I'm squatting at this age, training age, whatever, I'm old too, in real age. But at this training age, I can tell you what went wrong on any rep by feel. Like, I did this. And, like, she doesn't have that. And let's say she did somehow tap in, because the person can do that. Let's say she just got pissed off and adrenaline goes up and she decides she's going to hit 25 reps. Like, she could push herself way beyond into shit form if I was not there to say stop. And she wouldn't even know she was doing bad form because she doesn't have the vocabulary of her body from years of training, and we see that when people, that's another reason to have a coach on hand. Like, how many horrible YouTube videos have we seen of deadlifts and stuff? Like, and they don't know. Like, we can't blame them. Like, literally, most of these people are brand new people, and they don't even fucking know they're doing bad. Yeah. They can't feel it, and they think they're doing something awesome, And so, I mean, I think you need that time at the beginning, even to build the vocabulary within your own body, and have somebody telling you, like, oh, stop, knees came in, you're done. And now it's up to the athlete then to think about that and what did I feel? Because you can feel it. Like, I know, right knee came in. Oh, I did this. I pushed out on my toes. Like, I'm not thinking about this while I do it. Like, of course, when I'm squatting 780 pounds, I'm not thinking about, I wonder if I'm weights on my toes. But once it's done, I've had enough of these reps, I can tell somebody, like, yeah, I pushed out on the weight got in front of me a little bit. And I pushed out on my toes. And, whatever. I know what I need to fix. They don't have that there. And the weird thing is, from what I've seen over the years of this, generally, like, beginner training needs to be basic because they just need to build a foundation. Like, when your whole system is weak, we don't need to, like, do weak point training. Like, there's no point. Like, every part of you is weak. You don't have a weak point. So basic, simple training. And then it's in that intermediate stage where things get more advanced and more complex. You start having, your hamstrings are weak, so you're doing this. Your quads are pushing up, but your torso's not coming up with it because your hamstrings are weak and your glutes are weak. So we start attacking that. But then it's the opposite from what I've seen when people get to the advanced stage of training or elite, it's like shit gets simple again. You know, and I've seen this in a lot of like competitive powerlifters. Like their training gets very basic again because they've reached that point. They're at the opposite end of the spectrum. The beginner has no weak points because they're just weak. And the very advanced elite lifters, let's say an Ed Cohn, has no weak points because they're all strong. You know, he's worked enough on that stuff. It's like there's no glaring weakness. He's already identified those over the last 20 years. And like everything's in line. He's taken the time to bring all those up. Now just everything's strong, so shit gets less complicated again. And it's very basic training. You look at a lot of Ed's training in his later years, and it was stupid simple. It was literally like, plan out this 12-week program, and I'm adding 5 pounds a week. Mm-hmm. And it worked again. And it's like, I don't know why people feel the need to get super complicated with things. So
the principle of specificity seems to go right out the window.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so the fastest, like even for some of the grip stuff I've been doing, you know, I've talked to Adam about this, who's coaching me, and our whole thing was, okay, what is the most specific thing to do? You can't do, you know, the 175 lift yet. So what is the thing that's going to probably get us there? How do we add more variety to that? But before we add variety, like how often can you touch the damn dumbbell you can lift and pick it up?
Yeah.
And how many different ways can you do that? If you can, and then once you hit whatever the next marker is, so I recently picked up the 135-inch replica. Now it's like, okay, how many different states and ways can you do that? Could I do it cold? Could I walk into the gym and just pick it up? Could I do it after cardio? How many days in a row could I do it? So I was able to do it 8 days in a row before we left, right? Like take the thing that's, you know, is a stepping stone that's specific to your goal, and then just raise the floor. Like make that like an everyday thing, and then everything else will go up. But it has to be specific to what you're doing. Or a lot of times I just see people doing, well, I heard on the internet that, you know, 45-degree back hypers is the best for my deadlift, so I'm going to do those again. Like, well, how often do you deadlift? I don't know, once every other week. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It's find the thing that's important to you. Well, and then you have the other end of the spectrum. Like I had a client that I took on not long ago. He's in his 60s. And literally he called me up, and he had been doing the same program, sets, reps, and weights, since he started college when he was 18.
Oh, my God.
And he made no progress. Like, you've been doing the same fucking program for 43 years. You know? Like, now that's dedication, because that would be arguably the one of the main reasons to complicate things, and I'll do this on purpose with some beginner-ish lifters, is just novel stimulus for their brain to stop boredom. You know, there are things I'll have people do is like, I really don't need them to do this, but they like it and they'll have fun.
It's really for compliance.
And there's compliance things. It's like, really what you need is this and this and this, and we add 5 pounds a week or add reps. And that's the other thing people forget is there's multiple facets to progression.
To overload.
Like it's not just 5 pounds a week. Like a lot of times what we'll do is, especially when somebody starts reaching, like they start beating that 5 pounds a week, like, oh, that's getting hard. I'm not sure we can go another 5 pounds. Well, guess what we'll do? We'll go from, you know, let's say you're doing 8 sets of 2. Well, next week we'll do 8 sets of 3 at the same weight. You just did more. And then you can step that up to where they're doing 8 sets of 5, and then we bump up 5 pounds and we drop back down to 8 sets of 2. Mm-hmm. It's just simple progression like that. And at a point that gets fucking boring, and it takes a special person. And that's, like I've said, it takes a special person to excel in Olympic weightlifting.
Oh yeah.
Because they're doing 2 lifts for life. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's boring.
Sounds like a new T-shirt. 2 lifts for life.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really why I think there's less people that excel in Olympic weightlifting. It's the boredom factor of it, and that's why people are drawn to CrossFit.
Yeah.
Because the non-boredom factor of it. It's like constantly varied and, oh, this is awesome. You know, this is fun. It takes a special person to dedicate a decade to 2 lifts. And at least in powerlifting, I mean, you got
three
lifts. And and there's a lot more. You see a lot more.
You get more variety.
There's a lot more variety, and like, oh, I don't want to deadlift today, so I'm going to do good mornings, and it's basically the same lift, and there is no like mimic of a clean and jerk.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But I think just people need to get okay with the mundane work. It's like it's okay to go in and do that. Eat your meat and veggies, man, as far as training goes. And you are going to get more progress, in my opinion, with less risk of injury and overuse. And I've said it 100 times. Like, I have people come in and it's like, how do I get all my muscles in my legs if I'm just squatting? And they come in with this list of like 14 exercises they do on machines. And I would have them just squat for an hour. Okay, we're going to go in and do nothing but squat for an hour. And you're going to call me tomorrow and tell me which muscle from your waist down isn't sore. And they're wrecked.
Right.
Glutes, hamstrings, quads, like it's all there. And then it's a quick way to realize, like, oh, fuck, maybe I am just, like, you'll get more out of doing a basic compound move to, what would I say, aggressively or to completion, just really fucking do it than half-assing 14 lifts,
Right. I've noticed myself coming back from the ankle surgery, I can putz around on machines at Planet Fatness with disappointing next day feedback. I'm not really sore. I'm sore in a very isolated place. And then I just put literally like 135 on the Smith machine and did some squats, wrecked from my hips to my ankles.
Yes.
Like, wrecked.
Yeah.
Everything wrecked. And I'm like, it's just heavy compound barbell. It is like the food groups kind of thing. Like, this is a basic thing you got to do. I did want to say one thing, and I'm interested in what you guys, each of you, think about this from your different angles. But sometimes I think not just about money and internet and creating your own wacky system, but sometimes I think intermediate strength coaches, they read like the Journal of Strength Conditioning Research, and they get into this way into the weeds. Oh, look, here's an EMG study on reverse lunges on a vibration platform. And then they want to apply that, and it says, oh, statistically significant results. And sometimes we forget that oftentimes that advanced stuff it might be significant in that it's advancing an intermediate or an advanced person in some way. I mean, yes, the study could be on basic noobs. It's population specific. But I think, they look at these things, and something can be statistically significant, right? It can be reproducible, and yet biologically kind of irrelevant, like clinically unimpressive. So congratulations, you have a 1% improvement with all this complexity. And that might matter to Phil Stevens. You know what I mean? It's not going to matter to the young lady you're training who's just trying to build volume under weight.
Yeah. No, it's the same thing like we talked about on the show a few weeks ago. It's like all these parents, they look at the training that elite professional athletes are doing. And some of it's weird shit, but some of it's arguably weird shit just because it's weird shit. But there's a difference. You're talking about somebody that is they're at the stage of being a freak, and they can get something. An elite lifter can get something. It's just like we talked about earlier. Like if your max bench is 135, you can do some skull crushers with 60 pounds. If your max bench is, and you're not going to get much out of it, your max bench is 500 and you're doing freaking skull crushers with 315, and isolating something with that, you're going to get something out of it. Like, little Johnny doesn't need to do that crazy ass thing. Little Johnny just needs to get stronger all over. And his joints and things can't hold up yet to that crazy shit, putting yourself in precarious positions and things like that. It's like literally like complicate things when there's a reason to. When the easy doesn't work anymore, okay, let's make it a little more complicated.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think painting with a broad brush, what's the time frame where you see basic doesn't work anymore?
God.
I mean, I know it's individual.
It's individual, but I mean, usually super simple training can work for. I mean, I would argue like I could keep kids all the way junior high school and high school, and keep things pretty fucking simple.
A couple of years, I would think.
You know? Mm-hmm. Because hell, let's be honest with you. I mean, like if I'm lucky enough to get kids all the way through junior high, like my only goal for them is after 2 years to make them really good technical wise with 6 lifts. You know, if we can get there after 2 years, like to where they're just spot on and they don't like normal is not fucking up, you know, then we succeeded. Like, especially nowadays, because I mean, I have people walk in like they don't know how to control their own bodies now. Like, now I have special instances like this girl I'm working with now. She's been an athlete since she was like 6. So I tell her something, and she knows how to do it. Like, hey, turn your chest up, set your back. She has a vocabulary with the body through sports, but there's a lot of kids that have none. And like you tell them like flat back, and they'll like round the wrong way. You know? So a lot of that, it's like you said, it's individual. So I mean, but if you base it off the average person, I'd say it's years, not months or weeks.
Well, that's an interesting point you made about athletes, because I would argue a lot of bodybuilders and powerlifters, a lot of them are not athletic background.
No.
You know, they're drawn toward it, and yet, like you said, they don't have that sort of internal vocabulary. Am I doing this right? Does that feel right? Do I even know what feels right or what feels off? And because they're not an athlete, yeah, you might have to start even greater focus on the basics. I mean, think about these kids you're talking about, like high school, even early college. I mean, outside of like collegiate sports, because a lot of these kids have been athletes for a long time in collegiate sports, I think. But just saying supplement protein, right? And if you don't like supplements, you know, fine. You could do a chicken, whatever. But it's an easy thing. You take 1 scoop, 2 scoop, 3 scoop, I don't care. But, you know, between like 10 and 100 grams of protein, supplement some protein, and do your basic barbell work. That's going to get you really far, you know, really far.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say for let's say people getting up in our age, and let's say most adults are time crunched. Like, we don't have a lot of time in the day. We have a bunch of other adulting to do. Like, and you'll see these people do this complicated program. Literally, like my programs now, I'm not competing in anything. I'm just staying in shape. Like, I only do compound moves, and it might take me an hour, but I know I'm hitting everything. It's like I'm getting it done. Like, I'll go in today, I'll squat and I'll deadlift. Tell me what I missed from the neck down, you know? But, you know, as far as just being in generally good shape, like, why do I need to do 57 things when literally I can spend an hour and 45 minutes going to squat and deadlift and call it a day? And I'm going to slowly make progress, or at least at my age, like, I'm not even looking for progress. Like, I can't tell you the last time I hit a PR. It was before my last meet. Like, I'm fighting the good fight of not going backwards at this point. Because, I mean, you're pushing on 50 and things like that. And more so, I mean, I'm not saying people at 47 years old can't make progress. I'm saying that people that are 47-year-olds that were arguably at an elite level aren't going to make progress. Like, if you were squatting 780 at 47, don't expect to go to 800 and very easily without lots of help. But and just defining intermediate and advanced and things like that, I think it has very little to do. It has very little to do with the load you're moving, and more to do with your vocabulary under load. Like, being able to do things like I talked about, like, you're getting more advanced when you know what the fuck you did wrong. Like, you can feel it. You have a vocabulary with your body. Like I said, you're a total beginner when, like, you can't, when I tell you to, you know, like, get a flat back, push your knees out, and you can't do that, you're not an intermediate. You know, when you can't feel what I'm telling you went wrong, you're not advanced. Like, you get this vocabulary from years under the bar. And I don't care if you're a squatting 800 pounds, or like if you can squat 405, because maybe you're just genetically not that gifted, and that's okay. You start gaining this, like, oh, okay, I know what went wrong. It was that. I could feel it. Okay, I'll fix it. And they know how to fix it themselves. Like, you're starting to get more advanced. So
that's a good point. I mean, they're a beginner when they can't follow your cue. You ask them to do something, you're like, okay, no, honey, that's not it.
And they just look at you confused, like, I don't get it,
Yeah, and then not shame them, obviously. Yeah. Like, okay, well, let's take a step back here.
Yeah.
In fact, Mike, I wanted to ask you about, like, what do you do if somebody comes to you, or how many do come to you by the time they're talking to Dr. Mike T. Nelson? I mean, do they already have some basic vocabulary, or do you start rank beginners who just, they want big muscles? And, like, what would you do with them?
Yeah, so in the past I did, when I worked in a gym and I trained more people at my place, I did have a fair amount of beginners, actually. And funny story, side note, I thought moving into my garage, especially with beginners, general population, would be horrible. It was like the best thing ever, because I realized they could train and no one would watch them.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought they thought it'd be weird to go to some nutball's garage, but they thought it was great because no one even knew they were there. No one was watching them. So oddly, that was easier because they're not looking around like feeling bad because they've never done something before.
Yes. Yeah.
In the past, I would show them what I wanted them to do, like say kettlebell swing, have them do it, and then I would work on different cueing. And that works. I think there's definitely a time and a place for that. I think it's good. But what I realized was, like, their internal programming is so off that I think that's a longer path. So now what I'll do, and again, I don't have a whole bunch of beginners. I even do this with intermediates and advanced, is we'll just go in, throw them on a massage table, and I'll just do like a Kendall, really simple, mid-range, old school muscle test. Like, if your glute med on a table can't hold at a mid-range, there's something wrong, right? Like, if your basic muscles can't do what they're supposed to do when we try to isolate them, I'm not so sure when we put them all together, your brain's going to figure out that motor pattern. It's already scrambled. So I'll do a lot of RPR, reflexive performance reset, make sure all the main muscle groups on a table test pretty well. Again, you can be a magician on a table and their squat could go nowhere. And then we'll take them back to the garage and we're like, okay, cool. Now let's have you do a deadlift. And it's crazy the difference that you'll see. And when I give them a cue, they're much more likely to figure it out. So I've had a lot more success with that because I think, like Phil was saying, the vocabulary that people walk in with is so poor now that you're speaking a different language to them. So until we can give them a tool, I use RPR, there's probably other things you can use to get the main muscle groups to do what they do. The integration then is actually pretty fast, which is interesting because I think the body wants to move more efficiently. It wants to use your glute med as it uses a glute med. It just doesn't have the signal to know how to do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I've done, and that seems to work a lot better.
Well, and I think a big problem is people want to be advanced.
Oh yeah.
Nobody
they
don't want it.
Going, hey, I'm a beginner.
No, they don't want to say you're in it. Like, I'm a total beginner. Or I've faced this before. Like, their parents want them to be advanced when you're working with young athletes.
Yeah.
Like, I had 2 young athletes came in, they're best friends. One was an exceptional athlete. He knew how to move his body. So his progression in training went faster than the other kid. And the other kid's dad was pissed off because I didn't have him doing clean and jerks. And, well, when are you going to let him do them? When he can pick up a bar from the floor correctly. Like, he literally can't deadlift right. I'm not going to have him deadlift, throw it to his shoulders, and throw it over his head. Like, we got to go through steps, buddy. Like, could I have him do it? Yeah, but I'm an asshole if I do. Because literally he can't, like your kid can't walk upstairs right. I'm not going to have him do that. And that's where it's very individual. And, hell, I mean, a big part of it with your kids, if we're talking about, like, let them go play. Or, I hate to say this because I don't like making kids. Like, I don't make my kids do sports. Like, like make them get and move, like somehow coerce them into basic movement and go out and do it in a fun way. Like, let's go to the playground and play and go across monkey bars and jump and run. And like a lot of that is just, it's going to set them up later in life for just better things, because now we just don't see that. Like the basic movement of the population has dropped so drastically. You know? So,
and I think also the ability to or the willingness for repetition.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about other cultures, like a lot of martial arts, they'll talk about your training begins at the brown belt or black belt level, right? Because now you have a pretty detailed internal, a vocabulary to use what we're talking about here. And now you can pursue higher things with that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Nuances, and take it in your own style within reason. And there's a lot of things. Yeah. But that's after literally years of repeat, thousands and thousands of repetitions. And people don't want to, they don't want to do that anymore.
No. And it's like any art form, or like in my mind, science is an art form. Art is an art form. Music is an art form. And they preach like you need to learn the basics, what you've seen in everything. Like I learned all about Picasso going through art school, of course. And what people know Picasso for abstract paintings, right? And cubism and things like that. The problem is what people don't understand is, and I didn't know this until I went through art school, like he went to that because he had perfected traditional art. He learned the steps. And once you learn them, and the same thing's real in science, you need to walk the path that everybody has set out for you. And then once you master that, now break the rules. Because you have enough vocabulary to understand, okay, what happens if I try this? And you have the vocabulary to understand what went right and what went wrong. And you don't have that as a beginner. Like, if I just had a beginner that never squatted before, okay, we're going to do banded box squats with a safety squat bar. Like, holy shit. The stimulus is just crazy. And it's like, why? Like, they don't know what the hell's going on when I have them just squat a goddamn kettlebell and goblet squat. Like, that is as complicated to them as anything already. So why am I throwing 17 different other variables at them?
Yeah. I like what you said about it's sort of coming full circle, and like in science, I see people that it would be like modern art. The unskilled person goes right to that. That looks easier. I can fake it. In science, I look at sometimes qualitative research is like that. A lot of people will skip all the statistics and complex research design and a lot of the numerical quantitative stuff, and they go right to qualitative. Like, I'm just going to describe stuff. It's a whole different kind of thing. But the best qualitative researchers, in my experience, and I'm the world's leading authority on my opinion, is you come back around to that. You've demonstrated, like you said, you can paint realism, then you do cubism, or you take it in some radical direction.
Yeah.
And to me, a lot of times stats is like that. People who really kind of master or get really proficient with quantitative methods, then they can go on to qualitative. Again, that's my bias, but it feels like modern art. I used to hear even Bob Ross used to rip on people, on like modern art people.
Yeah.
They go right to modern art before they could do stuff like basic perspective.
Like I went to art school. I went to a master's program with people that couldn't fucking draw a face. But they're doing, they were poorly recreating modern art, but they couldn't do the basics. But I mean, if I break this down, let's say my easiest way to break down beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Let's say each of those take 5 years. A beginner would be 5 years of doing what we know works for everyone, meaning basic compound moves. You do that for 5 years. The intermediate stage is, okay, Now let's start breaking the rules and find out what works for us, for the individual. Like, we're going to begin with shit that we know, like squats work for everybody, unless you're fucked up. Like have an injury or something. Like squat, press, deadlift, chins, rows. Intermediate stage, okay, let's complicate things. We have a vocabulary with the basic moves. Now let's find out what weird shit works for us. And then the advanced stage, okay, we just did 5 years of finding out what works. We threw out 85% of that. We kept the 15% that works. Now we can take all that 5 years and let's do the shit that now we know works for me as an individual. Does that make sense? It's like beginner, super uncomplicated. Intermediate stage, complicated as shit. We're finding out the weird things that work for us. Advanced stage, we went through that stage of testing things. Now let's implement the tests. And it gets simple again. I know that this move works for me. Like, I know that if I deadlift from a deficit or mid-shin pulls, it is my weak point. I'm strong off the floor. If I do a lot of pulling from mid-shin, I don't have to pull from the floor. And I can, open with whatever I can hit as a hard single on a deadlift from mid-shin from years of testing that out. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's like you see this beginner, super uncomplex, intermediate, complex stage, testing things out. Like I learn the rules as a beginner. I break the rules as an intermediate to find out what rules work for me. And then I make it to that advanced stage. I know what the hell works for me. I'm going to do this. And things get less complicated again. They seem less complicated from an outside observer.
Right. Yeah.
So
there's that old adage in bodybuilding about how much you can get out of a single set. Like if you really know, like mind in the muscle, you're doing this more, you know what works for you. You can actually get a whole lot. Or like cheat reps. Cheat reps are supposed to make it harder, not easier. Right. Yeah. And so it's that kind of thing about what you come around to. Like, I can do this, and this really works for me. It could be body proportions. It could be metabolic differences or whatever, And I guess that's the art of coaching eventually. And it is fun to do the advanced stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's a siren song for a lot of intermediate level coaches. They get really excited about breaking research or who knows what, or maybe it's something they've seen. Yeah, but you got to kind of put it in context. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, there was that video, now it's been like 15, 18 years ago. Like Tiger Woods' coach was having him do golf swings one-footed on a Bosu ball. Like, well, how can he have a correct swing on 2 feet if he can't do it on one? Because you're having him, what do you mean? He's on 1 foot on an unstable surface.
He's got nothing to do.
He has zero transfer. He's never going to be on a golf course at the Masters and be like, okay, hole 9, you got to stand on 1 foot. That's the new rule on this one. It's like, holy shit. Like, you're complicating things just to complicate things.
Mm-hmm. And then I think what people forget is you want to collect the data from beginner through intermediate to advanced, like you said, Phil, in that intermediate stage, to know what transfers for you.
Yes.
So that you can then predict, like you said with your deadlift, what to work on in the future. Because as you advance, you can't squat heavy every day, or you can't deadlift heavy every day, right? So you have to add a little bit more variety, but you want to know, is the payoff for that variety there? And then it also gives you sub-max targets to work with. Like, so in my case, I could pick up the heavy 100-pound inch replica for 10 reps in a row. That transfers to about a single on the 135.
Yeah.
So in my head, which I haven't done yet, is okay, so I got the 135. If I can hit 10 to 12 in a row with that, I should get pretty close to the 175. Mm-hmm. So on days where I can't do the thing specifically, cool, I can work on reps, for example, on this. And I know historically that should transfer.
Yes.
Instead of adding whiz-bang exercise 47 going, fuck, I hope this works.
Yeah. And hell, that's part of, like, we all want to think we're making progress.
Yeah.
You don't want to go in the gym and think I'm just doing this shit. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My other last point too is that I haven't had a set program for many years. I mean, Adam gave me a bunch of stuff to work on now, but it was more like just here's the high level principles of what we want you to hit. And then I realized, like, God, every time I go kiteboarding or like snowboarding, I come back, my knees are wrecked, my legs are sore. And I went, wait a minute, like, how much like quad specific stuff do I do? And I'm like, probably not as much as I should. So I played the game of, let me go to the gym on an extra day on a Saturday starting in January, and let's just beat the ever living shit out of my quads and see what happens. Like anything where I can get my knee over my toe. Belt squats, knee over toe, hack squats, knee over toe, single leg press, leg extensions, the leg curls, all that other stuff. I wasn't really sore. And I realized, like after about 6 weeks, I made progress. But what was most shocking to me was, oh my God, I am so weak in those positions. It's crazy, because most of the stuff I did wasn't that specific. And I'm like, okay, so if I make that muscle stronger when I come down from a hard impact, like your quads are one of the main, absorbers of that motion, maybe my knees won't be as sore. And so far that's worked out. So sometimes you have to go all the way back to what is the problem you're trying to solve?
Yes.
Okay, how do I load that specifically? And then, to me, I was really shocked at, like, even now, how weak I am in those specific movements where that's one of the advantages of a machine is you can put yourself into specific joint angles and there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it.
Yeah. And that's also comes down to why.
Yeah.
Why are you training? What's your goal?
What are you trying to accomplish?
Because no matter what your goal, like as a power lifter, like I knew, like I'm going to get bad at other things to be elite at that thing. My endurance is going to go to shit. I'm going to, not total in the trash, but comparatively to the average person, it'll go down to go for this max effort thing to go up. And, my body weight will go up invariably because I'm trying to move maximal loads. So my freaking mile run time is going to go down because it has nothing to do with my goal, And that's, it's a whole different topic, and that's where my problem is with a lot of so-called strength coaches and like working with multi-sport athletes. It's like, we're going to train them like powerlifters. They're not fucking powerlifters.
No.
It's like, come on, man. Like little Johnny's a baseball player. His 1 rep max means shit. It means nothing. It has no, like, he just needs to play baseball better.
Especially if his 1 rep max takes him 4 seconds.
Yeah. That's like you were talking about. I went snow skiing. I remember this vividly. I was in the height of my powerlifting, and I was like, I'm freaking strong. And I went snow skiing, and I was fucking wrecked. My leg wrecked because you're in this like quarter squat for hours on end. And I was like, oh my God. The other thing that happened to me is I went snow skiing at like 200 pounds. And then the next time I went snow skiing, I was like 265.
Oh, damn.
Fucking Christ, gravity works. I was like, oh, I am fast. This is really fast, guys. Like, I go from 0 to really fast in a very short amount of time, being 60 pounds heavier. So,
The handful of just, recreational bike races I did was funny because being a bigger person, man, hills would suck. And I had an old as shit bike that was heavy as hell. But man, could I destroy people on the downhills?
Yep. So
put your chin on the handlebar and just let it go.
Gravity do its work. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll call it a day. That was fun.
Yeah, it was good.
So, I hope everybody enjoyed it. Again, got a seminar coming up. If anybody's interested, I posted it on the Facebook page. All the information, phone number to call in Bozeman, Montana. If anybody wants to come out, 2 days of awesome stuff.
I think we'll be able to make it.
That'd be fun.
We'll know for sure probably next week or so, but we'll hopefully be there.
Nice. That'll be good.
Yeah.
I said maybe we'll record something. I'd like to figure out because I always do Q&A stuff. I love Q&A stuff.
Yeah.
Like I try and set up at least half my seminar as like participant led, because I think they get more out of it. Like, tell me what you want me to tell you, instead of, because a lot of times if I just have everything scripted, like, people get something out of it, but then they're fucking emailing me for months because they had 47 questions.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give a good portion of the time to tell me what you guys want to hear more about. You know? So, but all right, guys.
All right.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.